The disruptions as a personal note for me has happened already twice in my young career. I started out my career in the newspaper business, and so you can imagine that in a very short time I learned a very, very hard lesson about how quickly an industry can be turned on its head, and you can find yourself asking what happened, how did my clock get cleaned that fast? I was in the IT department of that newspaper company, and it was a small business, and it became really apparent what was happening. But what was amazing was that the business from their point of view didn't really see a lot of it, or didn't acknowledge that such a significant shift was occurring. Whereas from a technology business, we were constantly kind of screaming at the top of our lungs, saying, guys, there's a problem here, there's this thing happening, I'm using it right now, it's called the internet, and we need to figure out how we take advantage of this. But we really had to fight to get any headway into getting the company to acknowledge that there was a need for a shift. And I guess it was a first lesson for me that sometimes you can shout as loud as you want, but sometimes an organisation might not listen, and you need to lead the way. And I think seeing what's happening in technology again today, in the latest iteration, it's the same scenario. The business doesn't necessarily know how important this stuff is, and it's our job as technology leaders to make sure that they do understand it and let them know that there are some canaries dropping dead in the coal mine, and maybe it's time that we thought about a plan. The second thing I've been encouraged, and I've worked with quite a few of you in this room, is this new focus on kind of fighting back. Nobody's sitting back like a victim anymore and just saying, oh, this is going to happen, some big global guy's going to turn up and beat me up. There's a real focus now on what are we going to do to get ourselves in a position to start to fight back, to start to evolve our companies from the technology side. And that's really exciting for me, because then we start talking about fight strategies. I'm currently involved in a thing called IT Heavy Hitters, which I encourage you to look up. It's a great cause, charity boxing event where the goal is to support the reduction of suicide attempts in New Zealand. But it's a really cool example of IT coming together in Wellington and doing a great event for charity. And one of the things about potentially getting your teeth knocked out or a black eye is you really start to think about fight strategies, right? You really start to think, what does it mean to fight back, and what are the implications? One thing my boxing trainers taught me is that your brain will tell you to do the exact wrong thing in a bad situation. And that's something to learn, is that your brain will make a lot of sense, and it will seem like the greatest idea in the world, but it will be the exact opposite thing that you should do. It's probably worth highlighting what I mean by that. So Neil, if you could join me up here for 2 seconds. Sorry, you've been a prop twice now. So if you could hit me with your left hand. No, don't. An interesting thing in boxing is if Neil tentatively puts his left hand out to hit me and he stands back, left, sorry. If he does that, the problem he's done is he's just given me an opportunity to hit him, because he's stepped back and he's done this. He's kind of doing this, and all he's done is he's really given me his jaw to knock him out. And my trainer's done that to me twice now, and it really hurts. The secret is when you attack. Sorry, Neil, just one more second. Is to be what he calls positive. So when you're trying to attack, is to be positive. So if Neil hits me again with his left hand, but this time he takes a big step forward when he does it, now I miss him. I can't hit him, and he can of course hit me with his hand. And that's a really important lesson, because your brain tells you to do this when you're under attack, right? Like this, and it's just a worse result. If you learn to positively attack, I think there's a good lesson. Thank you, Neil, for not knocking me out. We can do that later. So I think there's a lot of excitement, and I love this little guy. He's like, everyone thought he had his place in the world, and he thought, screw you, I'm going to get a gas mask. The thing I noticed about newspapers, my job after that was to design and implement on-premise infrastructure solutions. So that was a long-lived job. Is this notion of what causes, what are the things that allow disruption to happen to an industry? Where does it come from? What are the fuel sources as we look at it? And you really do see some good examples where fuel sources are put out. You hear some great examples about companies that invented the technology that ultimately ended up wiping them out. They just didn't want to implement it because they didn't like the sound of it. But we do see time and time again really good examples of privacy. If anyone wonders why things like people prefer to do loan applications online, it's because there's a high chance of embarrassment. They'd rather do something like that digitally, because rather than going and sitting in front of somebody saying, can I please have some money, they do it through the computer and they feel very safe. The same can be said for Tinder. There's probably an explosion in dating purely because people have a much less chance of embarrassment by using Tinder, because the guy just doesn't have to swipe right. But things like service experience, another really good example. It is so much better to watch media on demand in our busy lifestyles. That's a really good example. But likewise, Dowie mentioned banking. I don't remember the last time I walked into a branch to do my banking, because I do it on my phone. I feel it's more secure. I feel like I've got control of my money on my phone, and I don't have to worry about carrying around wads of cash anymore. So I think there is, in every industry, I think the lesson here is to think about what are the fuel sources, what are the things that aren't right about your industry, what are the attack vectors that potentially people could come at you. If we look at my boxing, it's the fact every time I throw a jab, I drop my right hand, so it's a pretty dangerous fuel source. But yeah, so I guess as you think about your industry, and I have done this with a number of CIOs now, we've actually looked at what is it that they know isn't right about their industry, and by basically getting on the front foot and attacking that, you can create a brand or a service that is essentially untouchable. There's probably 3 brands, and I won't name them, but there's 3 brands personally that a competitor could come in, they could offer me a 20% less price, and I wouldn't care. I'd just go, that's nice, really happy with what I've got, but thank you though, but I'm not really interested. The second part, which is, as part of the researching into how all this sort of stuff happens, it's really interesting looking at something like productivity. We have a scenario in our business at Rivera where a lot of people are really worried about their jobs. It's the first thing people think about. They're like, well, if we do this, what about all the jobs? Well, I think it was back in the 1800s, more than half of the population was required to dedicate themselves to just creating food for the world. That's how we survived. And if that shift hadn't happened, if mechanisation hadn't happened, we would still be doing that, and we wouldn't have IT and computers and accountants and all of those functions, because simply we would be too busy doing what we've always done, which was growing food. These are some great stats, and you can see the impact of exponential productivity, because it's not a single-fold increase, it's a 10 times increase, and Dowie called out a 9 times one before. Now there is nothing more, I've left my phone over there, but if you look at an obvious sign of productivity increase, the mobile phone. It's such an invasive piece of technology now. My 65-year-old father-in-law told me a year ago, he said, I don't know why you're constantly looking at that thing, it's ridiculous, and he didn't have a smartphone. His work at the start of this year gave him an iPhone, and every day that I pick him up from the corner of Featherston Street down here, he is sitting there answering work emails. I caught him last weekend in his living room as I went over for the Sunday roast, and he was answering work emails. So a lot of companies argue over the fact of giving a $500 or even $1,000 cell phone to their employees. Oh my goodness, right? The amount of work you're going to get out of employees using those apps is incredible, and I think that's what I'm seeing with the application ecosystem expanding. Get those apps into those users' phones, because you will get a 10-fold increase out of them in their productivity. Where the rubber hits the road, I think, for a lot of organisations today around productivity is the notion of the API economy. What's happening is turning your business into a platform that can be interfaced via an API. That's not 10-fold. That's potentially, if you go to the nth degree, it's a billion-fold. Right? 1 billion people can use your business as a platform, and you've just got to keep the lights on. In our business, we look at it. There are multiple people involved in any given transaction. We can take them all away with a simple API call. Those are really good examples of where technology is giving us productivity increases. And we're seeing more and more businesses and industries creating APIs and sharing those APIs with other industries, and you're ending up with these overlays of APIs. And it's a really good example of where productivity is coming from. The other part of productivity, which I think is going to be as important as tractors or mechanised farming, is the notion of digital intelligence. So digital intelligence is a really exciting field. I saw an amazing visualization a couple of weeks ago, and it was of a tennis game. And I didn't know it was of a tennis game. I just looked at this pretty picture, There's lines all over it. And what's happening is that in tennis, the pros are starting to apply digital intelligence to any given opposition they're going to play. They know what shots are the most successful for that player. They know where they're most likely to hit a forearm cross, where they're most likely to hit it back. They go into that game with unbelievable actionable intelligence on their opponent. And their opponent had no idea this was happening, so a few select players are really starting to get increases from that. I can only guess where digital intelligence takes us, the notion of a singularity. But we without doubt will see many current jobs being done with digital intelligence, and that productivity increase is going to be quite impressive to see. And you can never have imagined farming pre-industrialization and post. The guys beforehand, no one can kid themselves to know exactly what it would look like, but you have to know that these sort of things are happening. As we kind of get back to this scene of getting ready for this fight, health tracking, real-time health tracking, it is such an attainable goal of a business today to get a real pulse of their business, to know right now what is going on in their business from a dashboard point of view, from just a collaboration point of view. But there is really no, we look at this at our business and we go, we should know this right now about this thing, right? And someone will go away and they'll build you a spreadsheet and they'll turn it into a graph and they'll email it to you. There you go, that's where we're at with this financial result, right? Why did that have to happen? The system that we got the data from is online. The users online, they have a PC and a mobile phone. Yet there was a whole lot of manual intervention they had to take that known piece of data and give it to you. There was a whole lot of steps. And I like this idea. What are the basic measurements you should start getting right? And I think, we did a BI sort of workshop spitball session a year ago. And one of the mistakes you make is building this matrix-looking thing. It's incredible. By the time the whiteboard's finished, it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen, right? Except it'll take you 20 years to build, and most of the technology is still emerging. Just get a pulse. The first thing you might do is just pick one piece of data and get it on a real-time dashboard. And this is probably getting back to this agile methodology of don't try and build the end state, just build the minimum viable prototype of your health tracker. If you get your pulse and then your blood pressure and then maybe your glucose level, and you go through organisation and you just start to build up this really nice real-time picture, I think that's a way of demonstrating the organisation the value of building this health tracker, but it's a way of getting some measurable results really quickly. The setting course part, I think this is the other part. We don't know where this ends up, and I think most people try to, can't remember who said the quote, but they said everybody wakes up and says, what the hell am I doing, right? Nobody's an expert in anything really, we just all pretend we are. That's that was the basis for the quote. But it was really interesting in that rather than dictating an end point, as leaders, our job is to set a course, is to say, this is what we want to try to do, this is where we'd like to go, how we get there, what our actual end state is, maybe we'll never know. Maybe it's just a continuing thing. But this is a really interesting thing. And again, it's kind of that minimum viable approach. What I really like is, they should create a chief science officer role, right? Because your job should be experiment. Get out there and have fun, experiment. You can go on to Alibaba right now, and you can custom prototype physical objects now that will arrive in a few business days. Forget about just developing software. You can physically create things now, little sensors that cost about 20 cents that will get custom manufactured for your needs. And so there's this real opportunity now where, as I said, the cost has plummeted, right? It may be used to do an IT project, you'd probably say, minimum 250 grand for us to kind of see this thing out, which means there's a huge amount of due diligence that had to happen. Now I can probably have an Internet of Things prototype running with its own little custom app for maybe 10 grand, and if it all falls, to the wayside, I'll turn it off and we'll move on to the next thing. But that comes with the culture of nobody wants to fail over and over again, but nobody should be so petrified of failing that they never try anything. And I think that's what I see a lot of. Too many people are too scared to just take a step, put a toe in the water. And really, if you can just get everybody back to just thinking, let's come up with an idea on Monday morning. Let's give it a nudge. let's see how it worked, and then by Friday, maybe the decision is to turn it off, maybe it's to move on. But how cool would that be if you started an actual working week with something that hadn't even been started yet, and by the end of the week you were like, should we scale it or should we kill it? That's the sort of thing that I see a lot of international examples of what they're starting to do. They encourage people to do these 1, 2, 3 week kind of R&D exercises. I guess the last point about setting a course is that we in New Zealand are a small part of a huge global food chain in our industries, and I learn a lot by looking what's happening globally in my industry. It's one of the biggest truth tellers that I have is actually looking out globally and seeing what everybody else is doing. I'm lucky enough to go to conferences where I get a lot of that insight, and what you see is this. If we look at data analytics, right? Data analytics in New Zealand is amazingly still in its infancy. Yet in the States, 5 years ago, right? These guys, it's probably not even in its infancy then, but there is 1,001 really good examples of data analytics in the US that have been running for 2 or 3 years now. What worked, what didn't, and so again, to set your sights a bit broader, have a look around the world, see what's happening. So that was kind of a short brief into what I'm seeing, some of the trends that I'm starting to see. As I said, I'm working with a lot of people now, and I am excited that as New Zealand technology companies, we are looking to fight back. We have probably some of the most innovative examples in the world of people that were so much smaller. The fastest Indian, the John Brittons of the world, right? We have managed to take what people thought was a collection of rocks in the South Pacific and turn them into just absolute industry-leading global examples. Mercedes McLaren wouldn't exist today, right, without a guy in a shed in New Zealand. So I encourage you to take the fight to the rest of the world. I encourage you to, take the right pill. Don't wake up tomorrow and go, oh well, and be prepared to be disrupted, knowing that it's going to happen. So that was me. Thank you very much.